Okay, let's do something that's just fabulous. How about it? Today we're going to be talking about adjustment layers primarily, but you're going to be learning a few additional concepts in this. So I think you'll find it's kind of fun, even if this is not your thing. Hang with me here a little bit and let's see if we can have a little fun with this. Okay, first thing I need you to do is to install this font called Great Vibes. If you're in PC land, you just have to right click and click install. And if you're in the Mac world, you should be able to just go to the Finder and double click on the font, and there should be a little button down the bottom that says install. Okay, so let's get started with this. Let's create a new comp, make it HD 1080, and call it Fabulous Fractal 2. 5 seconds long, click OK. Let's start with a new black solid named BG. Make sure it's the size of the comp and click OK. Now we're going to create a new solid named Wispy Fractal. Wispy Fractal. Let's put a 2 after it. And just for fun, let's change the color. Don't really have to, but let's just do that there. And maybe more pinky. A little bit. Click OK. Okay. We are going to add fractal noise to this and ruin our perfectly pretty pink color. Fractal noise. There it is. And we've become used to our old buddy fractal noise by now. And we're going to go over here to transform, and we are going to uncheck uniform scaling. And we are going to set the width to 2000. Remember, you got to type that one in. And height is going to be 50. And we'll start at the beginning of the timeline. Make sure your playhead is at the beginning, and we'll click on evolution, and then we'll jump to the end of the timeline, and we will set the number of full evolutions to 2. 2 times 0. Okay, now we've got to use the pen tool here, so we're going to grab the pen tool and make sure that your Roto Bezier checkbox is not checked. And I'm going to create something that's kind of looks like a coffin. We're going to go sort of this shape right here. You're just going to click, 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 click. Maybe it looks more like a kite than a coffin. I don't know. As you know, now we've created a mask. And we need to feather this mask. So let's first press the M key and then the F key, F for feather. And we need to unconstrain our feather. So we're going to click on the little chain link right here. And the only thing that we want to feather out is the horizontal. So we can drag that out to around 160 or so. And now we're going to create a new adjustment layer. Layer, new, adjustment layer. Now, what is an adjustment layer? An adjustment layer is a layer that by itself doesn't really do anything, but what it does is influence other layers. In fact, the layers underneath. So you can have as many adjustment layers as you want, and it's going to affect all of the layers that are underneath it. So in our case, it's going to influence both of these. Let me twirl that up. And so let's go ahead and add some effects to the adjustment layer. The first one we're going to add is called Bezier Warp. This one's a lot of fun. Bezier, B-E-Z-I-E-R, Bezier Warp. There it is. And let's make sure it goes onto the adjustment layer. All right, so this looks all really complicated over here. I don't want you to worry about those. Instead, we've got some little handles over here that we want to play with. So I'm going to roll this back a little bit, and I'm going to start dragging these little handles out here. And the idea is to create kind of a wavy sort of a look here. Something like that. Now before we leave this, make sure you set the quality as high as it will go, a quality of 10. The more raggedy things get in here. So let's jump it up to 10. Now let's add the levels effect. Levels. Drag that on. And we're going to set the levels as follows. Input black is going to be 68. And input white is going to be 231. Now let's add another effect, CC toner. CC toner. Now depending on which version of After Effects you have, CC toner is going to look a little bit different. Let's go ahead and put it down here just to make sure it goes on the correct layer. And CC toner is kind of like the tint effect that you may have used before, only you have more choices here with CC toner. You have at least 3 colors that you can alter for CC toner. So we're going to start with the highlights. We're going to set the highlights to kind of a light pink color. Something like that. And then we'll set the midtones to a dark red. Like so, something like that. And now we'll add the glow effect. Not sure if we've used glow this semester, but glow, there it is. Bring that on. Again, I'm going to put it on the layer. Sometimes if you put an effect up here, it may go to the wrong layer. So I get sort of in the habit of just dragging it on to the composition window rather than in the layers panel, but I think the better option is to put it down here. Okay, so we'll set the glow intensity to 2, the glow radius to 50, make it nice and soft, and the threshold to 50 also. And there's what we get. Now let's go back to our wispy fractal layer now. And watch how this works. This is kind of interesting. We're going to put a couple of keyframes in here. Let's make sure we're at the beginning of the timeline, and let's press P for position and set a keyframe. I want you to drag it off to the left. And by off, I mean kind of way off, because sometimes this will kind of sneak in there on you and you really don't see it. So we're going to take it good distance off. And let's go to the 3-second mark now, and let's drag this all the way off to the other side and make sure, again, we give it plenty of space when we drag it off. Now notice what the effect is here. If we had set position frames normally on this, this fractal would simply move to the left and to the right. But here what it's doing is the adjustment layer that we set the Bezier warp and all those other effects on is affecting it. It's warping it, it's adding the glow, it's changing the colors, all kinds of neat things on this that this adjustment layer is doing. Pretty cool. Alright, let's go ahead and pre-compose both the adjustment layer and the fractal layer. And so we will right click and choose pre-compose, or you'll go layer pre-compose, either one. Let's call this colored glow line 2, since we already have a colored glow line 1, and we'll click OK. Now while we're here, let's go ahead and change the blending mode of this layer to add. This will make it kind of pop here in a second. Now let's go ahead and create a new solid. And let's make it a bright purple. That looks like that's getting kind of close to what I want there. Even more purpley. Nice and bright. And we will name it Vignette. In case you don't know what a vignette is, having a vignette creates a little dark edges. They're usually dark, sometimes they're light, that go around the image. It's kind of what you'd see in an old-timey photo. It's a very subtle effect, and it adds a lot of production value without calling a lot of attention to itself. Now we're going to put that just above the background layer, and what we'll do here is go up and choose the rectangle tool, and we're simply going to double click on it. And what that's going to do is create a mask that's the shape of the entire comp. And here's our mask, and what we need to do is feather this mask out. So we're going to press F for feather and give it a lot of feather. I'm just going to ramp this up to about, I don't know, 450 or so. And you can see the vignetting now. You see how it gives us a nice little black glow around the edges, or fall off, I guess, around the edges. That's a vignette. All right, let's create a new solid now. Layer, new, solid, and we will name this solid Sparkles. And we'll go ahead and make it sort of a yellowy color. Too yellowy. Something like that. Maybe more golden, whatever. Doesn't matter because it's going to get changed anyway. So we'll call that Sparkles. We click OK. So we'll add to this a new effect for us called CC Particle World. CC Particle World. Now we're going to be talking a lot about this in, I believe, next unit's tutorial, but for right now, I want you to just go with me on this. We're going to make some changes to this, and just you can look on your instruction sheet, but I'll go ahead and give you the numbers here. We're going to first twirl down physics, and we're going to change the velocity to 2, inherent velocity to 50, gravity that's pulling down on it, we'll set that to 0.4, resistance to 7, it's resistance against gravity, and we'll twirl down particle and go to the particle type called star. We need to set the birth size to 0 and the death size to 0.4. So they're going to grow from a very small size to a fairly large size there, and then die out again. So now we need to set some keyframes for birth rate. So we need to go to frame number 1. Let's just type it in over here, 1. And we're going to go up here to birth rate and set a keyframe. We're going to set the birth rate first to 0. Then we're going to jump to frame number 2 and set the birth rate to 2. Now we'll jump to 3 seconds in the timeline, 300 if we type it in there. And we're going to set the birth rate back to 1 again. And then finally at 301, we're going to set the birth rate to 0. So what this is going to do is let this particles kind of be born and then die out. Okay. Oh, and I see I forgot a couple of things. I got to change the colors here. I'm going to set the birth color to a bright yellow, something like that. And we're going to change the death color to a kind of a pale yellow. And to do this, we'll pick up, using the eyedropper, we'll pick up that color of the birth color there. And then we'll just drag this guy over to get our paleness. Something like that. So there is our sparklies right there, our little princess animation. Okay, the next thing we need to do is set some keyframes under producer for the position. We're going to be animating X and Y position. So here's what I'd like to do. I want to look and see where the arc kind of peaks out right in here for this wispy line. And let's go ahead and set keyframes for position X and Y here. And right now we'll just set the Y position to a little bit higher. Not much, just a little bit. And we'll come back to the beginning of the timeline. Let's go here, not quite to the beginning, so we can see where the wispiness starts. You can see that it's going to be in the bottom third or so. And so if you can look really closely, you can see the little gimbal here. So we're going to drag that horizontal position over and then down. So it's something like that. And now if we look at the other end of the timeline, we'll go all the way until the particles disappear, something like that. And we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. We're going to push it down a little bit and off to the right. Let's see how it works out for us. There we go. Those particles go on a little bit long for my taste. I think what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and press the U key for my sparkles. And I think maybe I'm going to grab the 2 keyframes right here, and I'm just going to move those back a little bit so that the particles die a little sooner. Maybe even a little sooner still. There we go. Something like that. Okay. Alright, so let's get the type tool and we'll choose the font called Great Vibes. Let's set the size to something really big, like 235. And we'll set the color to a kind of a pale yellow. And again, we've got our pale yellow color right there. That may be a little bit too far, so we'll give it a little bit more color than that. And let's just click in here and type fabulous. Click OK, and we'll get that positioned up. And what I'm going to do here, I've got all caps turned on. I need to turn that off. There we go. Get that centered up nicely on the timeline. And let's right click and choose Layer Styles and Drop Shadow for starters. And let's do the same thing again, Layer Styles, and this time we'll choose Satin. There's Satin. And you can see we're starting to have a kind of an effect on this type right here. So if we go into the timeline here, we can see where Satin is. Okay, so we'll go ahead and twirl that down. And let's set the color to a kind of a burnt orange. If you're a UT fan, that's your color. And we'll make the opacity 75% and the distance 8. And feel free to play with these settings. Do whatever you want with this. But we're going to go to a size of 3. And the idea here is we're trying to make this text kind of have a gold sort of a luster to them. So from here we'll go to the beginning of the timeline and we're going to animate angle. This is the angle that the light is hitting this font. So we'll start at 0 and 0. And we'll jump to the end and we'll type in 2 times 0. And the result will be this little sort of shimmer that happens across the type. It's kind of nice, right? Now this is kind of a fun one. Go get your pen tool and draw an arc. And so to do an arc, all you're going to do is click and drag on the left-hand side of the timeline, and then click and drag on the right-hand side of the comp, rather. So we make a nice little arc right here. Now what we're going to do is place the type on this arc. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go to Text, Path Options, and then we see one here that says Path. And what we've done on this text is actually create a mask, but you can't see it as a mask because it's just 2 points. It's not a closed shape. So anyway, we're going to set this to mask 1, and you can see that our text follows the arc right there. So we're going to animate this text to go from the left to the right. And we'll do that with the first margin. So let's go ahead and set the first margin there. And let's go across here, and we're just going to have it kind of follow that path across, maybe stop about 3 seconds. And here we'll animate to that side. Something like that. And maybe too far. Isn't that fabulous? Now, what I've done in the original version of this, I added some layers to this. I actually added 2 versions of this, and also a transition onto the text to wipe it on and off of the screen. So feel free to do that very same thing. But have some fun with this. I think you'll find that it's a pretty fun little project, and you'll learn a little something about adjustment layers, a little bit about particles. You'll learn how to put text on a path and make that text look all shimmery and goldy. There's a lot of fun little things in here. So I wish you luck on this, and let me know if you have some questions.